Okay, so today we're going to talk about the 5 largest cities within Germany. I'll be talking about the 5 largest based on only the city limits, not the total metropolitan area. But I do have an honorable mention. We'll start off with the biggest city in Germany, which is Berlin. Most people, of course, know of Berlin if they're thinking of Germany. Berlin has about 3.5 million people within the city, and in the metropolitan area, it's actually only second with about 4.1 million people in the surrounding areas. There's 180 museums within Berlin, making it a very culturally rich city. It's one of the only cities where stores are open pretty much 24/7, convenience stores, similar to that in the US. Most other places in Germany, especially rural areas, on Sundays stores are closed, and after certain hours everything's closed. Very different from America, although things are beginning to change a little bit here from my understanding. It was always a very affordable city, but more recently it's become a little bit more expensive and more high-end apartments have been built. So if in the past you were looking for a city to go and study or go and start work, Berlin was a very easy city to find a cheaper apartment, make a living, still have enough money to do some fun things and spend time with friends and stuff. I mentioned before that it's a very multicultural city. They estimate that about 500,000 foreigners live within this city, which makes up about 14% of the population there. And they come in from about 185 different countries. Next, we'll move on to Hamburg. Hamburg is located in the north of Germany, up on the North Sea, I believe. About 1.7 million people within the city limits, and about 2.1 million people in the metropolitan area. It's a city as well as its own state, one of 16 different states in Germany. I know many people don't know that Germany actually has its own states as well. Just like in the US, they all operate independently but cohesively as a united Germany. The city of Hamburg actually has the most bridges of any city in the world. Roughly 2,500 bridges, and those range from pedestrian bridges, railways, you name it, they have it. As I mentioned, it's on the sea, and it's a huge shipping city and trade city. They do a special welcoming to every ship that comes into port there, where they actually play the national anthem where the ship is registered from. And on the ship's way out, they actually tip or lower the local flag and German flag, and they raise the departing country's flag in an act of farewell and fair sea. Hamburg has an interesting street that, as of 2017, when this article was written that I read, women are barred from. It's a red light district, and unless you're a prostitute, you're not allowed to go on this street. The concept seems a little crazy to me. I'm not really sure how it exists or why, but an interesting fact about the city for sure. And the last fact about Hamburg is that actually the Beatles, although they claim they're from Liverpool, they began their musical career in the city of Hamburg, where they played approximately 270 times, honing their skills and creating their unique sound before they returned to England. And of course, they made many trips back to Germany and played countless, possibly thousands of times here in Germany as well. Third on the list is Munich, or as they pronounce it here in German, Munchen. Munchen is the capital of Bavaria, which is its own region as well. It was founded by Henry the Lion in 1158. Approximately 45% of the city of Munchen was destroyed during World War II from bombings and artillery. Similar to that of Hamburg, and Hamburg possibly got it even worse because of its necessity for the German war effort being on the coast there. But Munchen was also heavily destroyed during the war, unfortunately for architecture and the people there. It's considered the strongest economy of large cities in Germany, with an unemployment rate of only about 5.6%. And it's hard to imagine this, but although Munich is in the southernmost part of Germany, it's actually higher north than any large cities of comparable size in the US. So it falls just under latitudinally the line or the border between Canada and the US, and it's much higher than almost the entire US and any other large cities within the US. Of course, everybody knows about Oktoberfest here, which actually begins in September and only ends in October. There's something like 60 different beer gardens within the city, and 6 large breweries that hold the largest tents during these events. These 6 breweries still hold to a 500-year-old beer purity law. That beer purity law was put in place by a Duke of Bavaria, and basically, as I understand it, he didn't want chemicals and other things being added to the beer, and he wanted to protect beer drinkers here. And so he only allowed the basics of beer to be allowed into their breweries. So it was water, malt, and hops. And all 6 of these large breweries still hold to this and still brew their beer with just these 3 ingredients and no additives or chemicals, anything like that. Lastly, in Munich, you can find an extremely large English garden, and within the English garden there's a small river which, when it rains, the flow gets quite intense, and there's actually a part of the river where it creates a natural wave, and people have learned how to surf it, and because there's no ocean or anything close by, surfers from all around the area come there and surf this river. And nearby to the river in the English garden, there's actually also a nudist section. So if you're looking to get a full tan with no tan lines, then you know where to go. All right, 3 cities down, I think I need to take a break here and have a little snack. So I learned this trick in German. If you just think really hard and say out loud what you want, then it will just appear in your hands. So it's warm out today. I'm really feeling some ice. This isn't ice. That's an egg. Maybe in German, egg is Eier. Maybe strange. Well, I don't think I can eat an egg, but maybe I can have a Schoko Eier. That'll work. Look at that. Delicious. Okay, back to the largest cities. At number 4, we have Cologne, or in German, Koln. Cologne is about 1 million people within the city limits and about 2.1 million in the metropolitan area. The metropolitan area, I should mention, includes another city called Bonn. It's located north of us here in Worms and Frankfurt, and it's in an area called the Ruhrgebiet. I'm probably pronouncing that wrong, but it's kind of a very industrial area and a heavily concentrated area. I'm going to mention something about that a little later. Cologne was actually the capital when Romans came up here. It was the capital of this lower region of Germany called Germania Inferior. At the time, under Roman control, the city was named Ubi. However, the French had another name for the city called Cologne, and that's why this word maybe sounds so French, and in German pronounced Koln, but in English we still pronounce the French way, Cologne. Cologne has a huge shopping area, and it actually rivals and recently has surpassed the shopping of that in Munich. So it's quite the hotspot for tourists who love to shop. And actually an Italian expatriated and came to this city and loved it so much that she created a fragrance named after it called Eau de Cologne. And that translates loosely to water of Cologne, and I think that possibly that's where the term cologne in American English comes from, for a lightly scented man's fragrance. Lastly, we'll talk about Frankfurt. I've been to Frankfurt quite a few times because Juliana actually lived there for a while. Frankfurt is the financial capital of Europe, I would say. It's where the seat of the European Central Bank is, and now that the UK has moved out of Europe, most of the centrally located banks have come here, or come there to Frankfurt. It reminds me very much of Boston with its large financial district, and it's one of the only cities here, the only one that I've seen, that has a skyline similar to that of the U.S. There are many skyscrapers in this city, and in many other cities, including Berlin, with almost 4 million people in its city limits, are very sprawled and urban. Frankfurt, however, is more centrally located. There are many skyscrapers, as I mentioned, and it appears almost as an American city would. Frankfurt also has the largest airport here in Germany. It's one of the largest in Europe, and it was probably built here because of the fact that back in the day, during the time of Zeppelin travel, in a nearby town called Zeppelinheim, there was another airport but for Zeppelins. Okay, that pretty much does it for the 5 largest cities within Germany. However, I did want to put in an honorable mention to the cities of Essen and Dusseldorf. Essen and Dusseldorf are part of that Ruhrgebiet area, which is kind of the industrial heartland of Germany. It's very densely populated and heavily concentrated with industry. In this area, Essen, Dusseldorf, also a little bit of Koln and Bonn. This area has approximately 6.7 million people in the metropolitan area. So technically, if you were speaking from metropolitan areas, this area would be the largest, making Berlin second in metropolitan area. Essen and Dusseldorf are also part of the region that's very close to the Netherlands and Belgium, and perhaps because of the close proximity with these countries, more trade, more industry came through there. And many of the cities of this Ruhrgebiet are located along the Rhine River, which is probably the most influential river in Germany, or at least one of the top influential rivers within Germany, and makes it easy for transport of any goods up the river or down the river to trade either up towards the Netherlands and into the ocean, so worldwide, or the other direction down towards Austria, Liechtenstein, things like that. And yes, for any of you who've been wondering, I've tried to improve my geographical skills and been looking up as much as I can in my spare time. Alright, that does it. Thanks for watching.